I don't know about anyone else, but I get so tired of all the hateful rhetoric in the comments section of YouTube videos, when I watch YouTube shorts, the nonsense I hear on Facebook, and I hope I'm not the only one. Maybe I'm just still a bit naive. That's possible. And maybe I'm venting a little bit right now. One thing I try to do every day is to try to recognize my fallibility first. Recognize that I don't have all the answers. I don't have it all figured out. You know, that I'm just as finite and imperfect as everyone else. And it seems like a lot of people, it seems like it's like it just escapes people. It seems like there's just a tremendous lack of self-awareness. And, nobody has perfect self-awareness. I'm not saying I do or anybody does. It gets frustrating. How everybody wants to beat their political drum or their religious drum or their cultural drum or their lifestyle drum. Because at the end of the day, oftentimes, and I know because I've been there, right? I think we all have moments of this. It gives us a sense of superiority, right? It gives us a sense of control. I was on Facebook today and I was reading a post by a good friend of mine, and she talked about, in light of certain events in recent history in here in the country, that, murder is murder, no matter where you stand. And she posted the same thing, a few months ago when someone else of high profile was murdered, right? And I agreed with her, I think it doesn't matter, wherever we stand politically or culturally. I mean, human life has intrinsic value, right? What I noticed, though, is one of the comments is, there was what I would assume is a fellow Christian that made kind of a snarky remark about something completely unrelated. And that's why I decided to make this video today about love your enemies, and there's some people say that it's, I've seen people say, it applies to all of God's enemies, or sometimes it applies to just our enemies as individuals. Either way, one way that I look at it, and this is just one angle, right? We could definitely look at it from different angles. I think the reason that Scripture tells us to love our enemies is because it's very easy to put it as simply as possible, it's very easy to become the very thing we hate. So often people, they want to fight tyranny, but in the process become a tyrant. You don't become a monster to fight a monster. We can, but when we become that monster, it's very difficult to come back from that. Look at Jesus himself. He didn't fall into darkness to fight the darkness. No, Jesus was always good. And I think that's an example for us. And I think that's why it's so important. Many reasons why, but one of the big reasons why it's important to love our enemies is, again, so that we don't become that monster in the process. And it can happen. It's very cunning. It's very sly. It can happen very easily. Like they say, the path to hell is paved with good intentions. Fear, ego, and good intentions breed evil. It's so easy to become that monster, right? Whether it be for a moment, for a day, or perpetually. I've said this for a long time, and I'll continue to say, I think, to me, the people that say that they would never become the monster, to me, those are the people that are the most prone. Because they can't see the forest in the trees. Nonetheless, at the end of the day, to me, it's a good piece, it's a good nugget that I should carry with me. I think that we should carry with us. Right? We love our enemies so that we don't become just like them. Just from another side of the coin. Now, what that looks like, the ins and outs, that's a whole nother video. I mean, that's a whole nother tangent for another day. I just wanted to put this out there, just give a quick thought about it. And it's tough, at least it can be for me, right? It does take a lot of practice, no doubt. Because my flesh it's human nature, I believe, to say, well, you hurt me, so I'm going to hurt you. You know, you're being nasty to me, so I'm going to be nasty back to you. You know, Jesus gives us grace and mercy every day of our lives. I think it's important that we try to show even a fraction of that same grace and mercy to those around us. It doesn't matter what someone's politics are. It doesn't matter what their sexuality is, if they have a different religion, a different culture, because, you know, at the end of the day, we're all still made in the image of God. So let's, you know, I think we should, I know I try to make a good effort every day. You know, if I feel myself getting triggered, which I can, you know, I'm just as human as everyone else, to just back up for a second, because that's a slippery slope that we can get on very fast. Now, again, you can get off a slippery slope. The longer we're on that slope, though, the harder it is to get off of it. God bless.